Hello and welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute delight to be joined by the fabulous Jason P. Carroll. Jason, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this. And as we demonstrated just a few minutes ago in the green room, we can get stuck in really quickly. So before we do, let me share with the audience a little bit more about you. So Jason is the founder and CEO of Aptive Index, a pioneering company dedicated to transforming hiring and leadership practices by integrating advanced psychometric assessments and strategic advisory services. Aptive Index is on a mission to redefine how organizations identify, develop, and retain top talent by providing data-driven insights that align leadership capabilities with organizational goals. I mean, what an amazing mission to have. And having worked both in leadership and actually for a period running an exec recruitment firm, the need for us to be able to better align the capabilities with the goals, and also to be able to access that data-rich decision making is vital, isn't it, for our future success? So could you bring to life a little bit more about your journey so far?
Yeah, sure. And that was quite the mouthful of bio there. That I'm sure my PR company worked hard on, and it's good. I would also just say, if somebody's like, "Wait, what do you do?" It's an assessment, and it fixes hiring, and it makes us better leaders. There you go. And the reason that's important is because I have been a not good leader in my past. I've had some successes and I've had some failures. Certainly learned from both, but kind of early on, the failures were more about execution. And my first startup, I refer to as my $125 million mistake. It's a whole nother story. But that's prior to Aptive Index. I only had one other startup. Everything else has been more like an intrapreneur, like going into an organization and creating something new inside of it. And at my last company, I was part of, I was there for 7 years, and it was already 3 decades old when I joined. And I was part of a growth from 800 employees to 2,500 in that 7 years. And I was at the helm. I was the president of that company. But it was about midway through the journey that I started seeing, okay, there's things we're doing right. We got culture right. That was really what disrupted everything, was just treating people like humans. But from a leadership perspective, I started seeing, okay, a lot of this growth is not because of me. It's actually in spite of me. I'm not as self-aware as I liked to think that I was. And so that's some context, because when we get into the assessment and like, okay, if you fix hiring, you make better leaders, et cetera, a big portion of that is understanding self-awareness and awareness of others, and how differently we are all wired and what motivates us and drives us. Things that, once you get them out there and you talk about them, are simple, but I just didn't have the language for it. I didn't realize it early on in my career.
Oh, I love that. I think it's so true, isn't it? We do evolve as leaders, and I love the whole, we got the culture right. We treated them like humans. I mean, who knew that would work? And yet it's so sadly not always the one that we think of, is it? It's like we're busy following the path that we've been told is the right path to lead, and yet actually, and I'd love your thoughts on this. For me, my biggest journey into leadership was when I learned more about who I was. And why I was, and what was important to me. Because until I became self-aware, it was really hard to be an authentic leader, to really stand up there and say, this is what I believe in, because I hadn't done that piece of work. Does that resonate?
It does so much. Like, to a T, it resonates. When I first got you said the word psychometrics earlier in the bio, and people are like, what the heck is that? So a psychometric test, assessment, or whatever, is the fanciest scientifically validated version of either like a cognitive or a skills or a personality and behavioral. And I was introduced to psychometrics, I think, in 2016. And it was because hiring, as in that kind of growth, was the bane of my existence, right? Just constantly hiring people. I had to turn over some people in the senior leadership team, had to do some shuffling in the executive leadership team. And I realized that hiring sucks, and I suck at hiring. The psychometrics were huge from that point of view. But before I ever even got into how this is going to transform the hiring piece, it was the self-awareness piece. I was already on this journey. Do you know who Dr. Brene Brown is?
Yes, I do. I do. I admire her work greatly.
Yeah, all listeners who don't, just turn this off right now. Go look up and go to the Brene Brown deep dive, and then come back. But anyways, I started getting introduced to all her work. It's about vulnerability and shame, her gifts of imperfection, braving the wilderness. All of these books that she wrote that were incredible, and they were really hitting me over the head with self-awareness. And then the psychometrics came in. I'm like, okay, this is like a scientifically validated version of showing me who I am, and it just explains so much. And here's the big thing with self-awareness for me, and I apologize if I'm talking too much, but we always ask, like, why do we do the things that we do? Because if we're trying to become self-aware, we're probably motivated because we saw some mistake we made. We screwed up in leadership. We did something wrong. There was an impact of our behaviors that didn't match our intentions. And so it's like, why do I do this stuff all the time? And that question kept leading me to like identity-based answers. Like, why did I just steamroll my team? Well, because I'm an asshole. Or I'm a bad leader or something. Those were the answers that I was giving myself. But then when I read Dr. Brown say that whenever you use a shame statement, then there's no inflection point for change.
Yeah.
If I am bad, how do I ever get better? The self-awareness started showing me, oh, there's just drives and motivations inside of me that they're baked into me. I can't escape them. They're not going anywhere. And those are motivating me and driving me, creating needs, which are creating these behaviors. And all of a sudden this like light bulb went off of, okay, it's not easy, but it's simple. If there's a behavior that's based out of these drives, not like out of trauma and PTSD, that's different. Well, that's a totally different conversation. But the behaviors that are based out of these drives and needs and motivators, I can just pick a better behavior that will fulfill those drives and motivators that has a much better outcome. And it just became so simple. And I started doing it and practicing it and rinsing and repeating over and over and over again. And then 6 months in, it was like, oh yeah, we can hire better too. Cool, let's do that.
I love that. One of the things that you said in there totally resonates, because I use this all the time, is the difference between impact and intent.
Yeah.
They can be way off. And one of the things that I found was whenever I was giving anybody any developmental feedback, we wouldn't be having the same conversation, because I'd be talking about their impact and they'd be talking about their intent, and therefore you could never be on the same page. And so I started to learn how to have those conversations by starting with agreeing the intention. What I think you were trying to do is, what I think you were trying to achieve is that. And they're like, yeah, brilliant. That's exactly what we'd like you to do. Can I now talk to you about your impact? Because that might be what you were trying to do. It's not quite what happened. It's like, so that we can align ourselves to that same page. But a lot of it came from having learnt that on my own impact versus my intention.
That's really smart. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that was your approach, because so often the reason we get defensive and focus on our own intent is because we don't think that the person on the other side of the table actually believes we have good intent.
Yeah.
Right? That we don't think that they're making good assumptions about us. And so often, guess what? I'm not. Unfortunately. And so that's one of the big things I've had to work on, is actually making good assumptions. But
for me, one of the things which I am definitely somebody who sees the best in everybody, so I have to own up. But I was under the place, I don't think, there's always an exception to every rule, but I don't think most people get up and go, I wonder how to be a rubbish employee today.
Right.
I wonder how to really cheese off the boss. I wonder how to make all of my teammates want to leave the room when I enter. So if we assume they're not thinking that, even if that's the impact they're having, it's probably not their intention. So let's try and work out what their intention is. And then we can become their ally. And we can go, right, well, we're in it together, because that's a great goal. And I'd love you to achieve that goal. Now let me help you see where you get in your own way. Let me help you see where, you know, you're not quite landing the way that you wanted it to. Because I think sometimes we get stuck in our reading of the situation, don't we, of what we think is going right. And I read somewhere that, you know, how the human brain works is it doesn't like gaps. So in the place of fact, it creates a story, and the story is always much more fascinating than the reality.
Totally true. Yeah.
And so we get stuck, don't we? We've got a story, you've got a story, but we don't tell each other our stories, because then we might actually stand a chance of working out what's really going on and navigating it. So, and I guess you know, from the bit I know about psychometrics, is it allows us to better understand some of that, doesn't it? To better understand not necessarily somebody's strengths, but where their preference sits, where they're inclined to go if they're not feeling intentionally in control of what their thinking is. Would that be fair?
It is very, yeah. I think about, so the self-awareness piece was first, you know, like realizing that my impact isn't matching my intention and I can do something about that. And then that didn't just fix me overnight. Like I wasn't just automatically the best leader in the world. I was still making mistakes because I wasn't meeting the needs and the motivators of people on my team. And I think I was just ignorantly assuming everyone else needs what I need. And one of the most shocking pieces was that, you know, the advisor, the person that we hired to bring, you know, come on and like teach us all about this, is like, you need to give your team better direction and instruction. You need to tell them what to do. And I was just like, nobody wants to be told what to do. And he's like, yeah, at least half the population prefers, not in a way that strips them of their autonomy, not in a way that micromanages them, but they want to be given clear instruction. They want to know what done looks like. They want to know. And I was just like, no way. No, people don't want to be told what to do. Like they want to see the vision and then figure it out themselves. And he's like, Jason, brother. Yeah. I mean, if you tell me what to do, and like, there's even a hint of I don't get to fully be in charge of how I execute on that, it just grates on me. It's like there's something in my soul that rips apart and it's just like, don't tell me what to do. It's weird. And so I just assumed everybody else is the same way.
I love that, because we do, don't we? We make these assumptions until we do, you know, that really weird thing. We ask them what they'd like. I remember, probably about 20 years ago now, and I was doing one of those awful role play learning things that you had to do as leaders, and we were being taught how to deliver feedback, and I was quite a senior leader at the time, and they were like, Kim, you can come up and you can role play this delivering feedback. And I was like, great, yay, where do I sign? But okay, here we go. So I got to the top and I sat down. I said, before we start, I said, can I just ask you, how do you like to receive your feedback? And the whole room just went quiet. And the people teaching it just looked at me and went, nobody's ever asked that question. And I was like, what? I don't understand, why not? Because if I want you to get the most from your feedback, surely I have to understand how you best receive it. Because if not, we're already going to be off to a hiding to nothing, because I might deliver it in a way that you have an allergic reaction to. And therefore you don't take on board the feedback, which is being delivered because I care and I want you to achieve what you're looking to achieve. And instead it's just going to feel like a criticism session. And he was like, genuinely, nobody's ever asked that question. So that's intriguing. I mean,
if everyone did, to be fair, if everyone did ask that question and people authentically and vulnerably answered that question, like half of my business model would be out the window. Like, because we're showing you as a leader how your people prefer to receive feedback and how they want to communicate, and you know, even how they want to receive praise. And I mean, I've been in this work for however long, and I also have it. It hasn't occurred to me that somebody would just tell me how they. Yeah, so good on you again. You and I need to stay in touch after this podcast because
Well,
you're quite smart.
we so do, because I think we could chat about so much, but I think for me it's always been that, and I wonder if some of it came from the fact that when I left school to be a hairdresser, and they taught me 3 things which for me sum up leadership, and I'd love your thoughts on them. And that was, the first thing you had to do was listen to really understand what the other person was trying to achieve. Then you had to help them to try and achieve it, and you had to have them leave you feeling the very best version of themselves. And I was like, well, if you do that as a leader, that's pretty good leadership. If I understand what it is that you want to do, I help you to achieve it, and you leave me feeling better, like an increase, like I added some value, then maybe that's good. And I think possibly because I had that simplistic view of the world when I then moved into corporate finance, which was a far cry from hairdressing.
Quite different.
I followed the same approach, which was, rather than assume what it is, then I'm just going to ask them. I'm just going to ask, because like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to learn something I didn't know before, and that'll be kind of cool. I could live with that.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it was an unusual approach. Now that I look back at it, I said for many years I made a career out of asking the dim girl questions, the ones nobody else had asked. Like, why are we doing that? I understand. Somebody help me and understand where these bits go. But I think we got so sucked into the perception of what we were supposed to look like in each role, that we're busy playing that instead of doing the role and being the role and bringing our whole selves to it. Does that resonate?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I could add much more value to what you just said. What I do think of, though, is parenting. One of the ways we parent our kids, my son who's 15 and stepdaughter who's almost 12, even really, really young, it was always like, what do you want from this? Like, look, we're your parents. You're not completely in control of anything, but like, we constantly let them be part of their decision making, even if it was like, okay, you only have 2 choices. Which choice is it going to be? But like, that's the way you empower people when you care about them, is you include them in the big picture why, the kind of purpose. You make them, and I love the very last thing, you leave them feeling better about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we do it with our kids, is it makes them feel better about who they are. It helps them increase their autonomy and their decision making, critical thinking, and all those kinds of things. And it's easy to do because I care. And if I find myself in leadership and it's not easy to do in leadership, well, I might have a really tough question to ask myself, like, do I really care? And if I do, then how did I get off course? Like, what is that stuck mentality that's preventing me from going and having more genuine conversations like that?
Oh, I love that. And I think it's true. We learn so much, don't we, from parenting. My little girl's a little bit younger, so she's 8. And we do a lot of that. There's good choices, but there's choices that serve us and there's choices that don't serve us. But the beauty about choice is you make one that doesn't serve you and you get to make a brand new one straight afterwards. You don't become the choice. You don't have to wear it for the rest of your life. It's like you can change that. And I loved it. One of the things you shared, which really resonated with me, was you give them permission to be part of the solution. Mm-hmm. You give them that. You tell them what the why is, and then you allow them within parameters to actually be part of the solution. And that is what we do with our people, isn't it? If we do it well, we give them permission to help us solve the problem, to help us innovate and iterate, to enable us to move forward and do something that perhaps we couldn't see if we did it just on our own. And I think, we see that there's a lot of talk. I'd love your thoughts on this, of culture these days. Have we got the right culture? Do these people, are they a good cultural fit for where we're going? And I guess, whilst that is really important, how do we really start to drive that culture add? So what are the things that we can add to that so that the culture continues to grow and enables us to really develop and empower those diverse and inclusive teams, because we've got so much diversity these days, haven't we? Not just the traditional diversities that we were all aware of, but now neurodivergence, and there's so many other things that we have to factor in. How do we make that shift?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and I know it feels silly, but because some people might say, "Oh, it's semantics," but you already said you use the words culture fit, and you also use the words add. And culture fit to me, if I'm going to think about, like, get away from like work in my friend group, like, who's somebody who fits in? Well, it's going to be somebody who is pretty similar. Life stage, like how old their kids are, if they even have kids, socioeconomic. I mean, that's going to be the easiest fit, right? And it's not necessarily what I'm looking for. It's just that's going to be the most comfortable.
Yeah.
Come on into my living room. We're pretty much the same. But if that's all I have as a human in a community, I'm not really going to grow as a person. My kids are going to be stuck with only seeing that one little narrow view of the world. And so it has to be the same in a company. If we keep bringing people in that are just the most natural, easy fit, then we're not going to get diverse perspectives. We're going to serve the audience that we serve, and we're not going to really grow. We're not going to be pushed into other ideas. And I think culture add is really what we're looking for. We're adding to the diversity of perspective, of mentality, of hardwiring, of skills. But the add part also does have to include the value system. Right? I don't want to bring in somebody like, "Hey, look, come into my living room. You're totally different than me." And they're like, "Yes, I'm a serial killer." Okay, well, yeah. Let's leave out the value, the people whose values suck, but let's bring in the people that are totally radically different than us, who are safe for our mission, our purpose, etc. But who widen our lens of scope.
I love that, because I think we do always need that. We need that balance, don't we? If our values don't align, even if our experiences are very different, if our values are misaligned, there's going to be friction, isn't there? There's going to be uncomfortable friction, because if you're I'm not, and you're not, we're not serial killers, and the chances are we're not going to gel quite so well, because actually, if we value the sanctity of life, then that's not quite going to fit with somebody who doesn't see that as quite such a important thing to have going.
I went way extreme with my example. It's my bad.
I was trying to bring it, but I think there's those elements where we can say, we've got good value fit, but we've got diverse experiences and diverse ways of looking at things, or ways of resolving a situation. And I think sometimes with some of the testing, it helps us see some of that, doesn't it? I mean, remember years ago I did Myers-Briggs and became a practitioner on it, and it was fascinating to see just how different, being given the exact same thing, you viewed things. So we did an exercise where they had all the extroverts, and they're given a Christmas tree picture. All the introverts, and they were given a picture of the Christmas tree, and the extroverts had wandered off. They'd got carol singers, they'd got the fire crackling. Nothing was on the picture that said any of this, but they'd created the external environment. Whereas the internal focused people could tell you exactly how many baubles and what colours they were, and every detail of it. When you put the two together, that's when you had the most expressive view of what was going on. And it was always stayed with me as that piece of going, actually both had got really, really valid experience and thoughts and opinions that, when put together, when allowed the opportunity to coexist equally, that actually ultimately both groups grew. And I guess that's what we're kind of looking for, isn't it, with that culture add, is being able to find those differences but see them as an opportunity to grow together versus an opportunity to rub up against each other. Would that be fair?
Yeah. And got a dog in the background. Yeah, and um, kind of like a shameless plug along those lines. One of the things that we had to do to be validated as a pre-hire tool, we had to exceed all of these validation requirements about anti-bias and test retest, and all the components had to factor all this kind of stuff. And the great part about that is all of these attributes, there's no correlation between age, gender, ethnicity.
Yeah.
And so if you know kind of like the ideal, what you're looking for any particular role, you're looking at percentage match data points. I mean, it's like objective data that's coming in, which is really, really powerful for that aspect of diversity and new perspectives. The kind of other aspect of that is, because you mentioned the introvert extrovert. We have a similar trait. It's got a little bit of nuance that we're measuring, but you think about the like painfully introverted type of people that are probably really great for roles like software developer or accounting specialist, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Where like that's a strength of theirs because they are working solo. They are getting that super honed in, focused kind of flow state. Well, those are the people that don't think on their feet. They don't perform great in an in-person interview, certainly not some panel interview, right? And so if you and I, just based on what I see from our personalities, if we're interviewing those people, we're walking away going, "Oh my gosh, that was so that person was so dull and boring or whatever," and we're not going to like them, quote unquote. Well, if we can't look past that subjective likability, warmth, whatever, we're going to miss out on the hidden potential. And so, which again goes back to the culture ad. Get people that don't think on their feet. Get people, if you're an introverted company, get you an extrovert or two. Maybe don't go extreme because they'll drive you nuts, but we have to diversify. We have to know, like, what are we hiring for, and are we even interviewing them the right way? Like, maybe I should give a software developer or an accountant some written questions and let them ruminate on their own, and email them back or something. I don't know if that's a rabbit hole or not, but
I think you're right. It's almost like giving people the chance to step into their sphere of genius, because we're not all going to step into it in the same space. You put if you got a really painful introverted person and said, what I want you to do is stand up and present to this group of people, you're not going to set them up for success. They're not going to think that's great. And they're not going to be able to perform at their best, because actually you've just put them straight into their version of the lion's den. So now they're in fight flight mode, and they can't be thinking. Whereas the reality is, how likely are they ever going to be in that environment with the job you're hiring them to do? I remember years ago having this poor girl, bless her, who was amazing, and she would be such a great leader, and she was phenomenal at taking the team on the journey and all of the things that you would expect. But I worked for an organization that insisted that you had to sit specific tests to be able to go up to different levels, and she couldn't pass the maths test. And I was like, but look at her with the people. She's brilliant with the people. They're eating out of the palm of her hands. She ran my den, which was the element of new hires when they first came through before they went out. She ran it effortlessly. Everybody loved her. I said, but she can't do a maths test without a calculator. I can't think of a single time in the 18 months she's worked for me where there's ever been an occasion where she hasn't had the opportunity to have a calculator should she need it. So why am I testing everything that's just never going to happen? Right. Actually, I'm there and I'm pretty good at maths. So if it was really stuck, I can do that bit for her. I can. That's the part I can bring. But it really struck me that we were assessing people in a square peg round hole kind of way, and then wondering why we missed out on real talent that could help people grow.
I think that the days of cognitive tests are hopefully almost done, because if math was important, at least some aspect of the role, today I would put here's a notebook and a pencil. Here's a calculator. Here's a computer with ChatGPT opened. Solve this problem. And if they go to the pen and paper, I'll be like, yeah, you're not going to do well here. Like, I don't care if you can do it. Just do it, right? And yes, things like that are just so silly these days.
I love that. It just reminded me of, I remember the first time ever, and we're going back probably 20 years, I got given an in-tray exercise, and I had no idea what one was. And I went to the leadership thing. It was in-tray. So you were given a tray of things that you had to do, and I was like, well, this is ridiculous. And loads of paper. And you were supposed to write on all this paper. I was like, I wouldn't do that. I would like, I need to speak. So I'll pick up the phone to so-and-so and I'll solve the problem. And whilst I'm there, I'll mention this. So I wrote at the bottom of all my sheets of paper, I phoned blah, de blah, or I emailed such and such. While I was there, I got them to solve these 3 problems as well. And they came up and went, we couldn't mark your in-tray. So I went, you didn't follow it. And I was like, no, but I did what I would do if I were in the job. And they went, that's what got you the job. But then that your assessment was so out of kilter. Because if I'd have done what you'd have asked me to do, it'd have taken me 4 times as long, and you wouldn't have got that. So that's why I love the fact that a lot of those are like almost 20 years ago. They've ceased now. We've realised that actually they don't deliver people who are necessarily going to thrive in the environment we want to. And these days, with the advances in technology, and like you say with ChatGPT, there's so much stuff at our fingertips that actually it reminds me of the Henry Ford story. I don't know if you're aware of this, where he was slandered in a paper for being an uneducated man, and he decided to sue. And he took the paper to court, and they spent their entire court case trying to prove that this guy was an uneducated buffoon. And they kept asking impertinent after impertinent question. And eventually he got very frustrated, and he said, "Can I just stop you there? On my desk, I have got a big electronic box, and at the push of a button, I can summon anybody in my organization that will know the answer to any of the questions that you've asked me. Should I want to know the answer? Why should I need to know the answer when I can get it from one of those?" And it closed it all down, because everyone realized that that's not the answer of an uneducated man. That's the answer of a very educated man who isn't filling his brain with stuff he doesn't need to know, because he knows who to go to get the answer. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for with the way we're moving forward, isn't it? Is to find people who are going to be able to bring that new perspective, to bring that that diverse thinking, to be able to ask the better questions. How do you see the next evolution of how we're going to recruit people?
I hope I am seeing what the evolution is going to be, because it gets me excited. It's how I imagine my kids get hired. It's good to see trends like the ones you're mentioning having gone away. I remember being asked an interview question one time. It was something like, they said, how many airplanes are in the sky at any given time around the world? And like at this point, I was kind of already annoyed. I already knew I wasn't. I was like, I'm going to give you a perfectly accurate answer that you cannot deny is accurate. At least a dozen. Move on. It's just like, this is such a dumb question. And I know that what they're trying to figure out is, how would I get to the solution? It's just like, no. That was like that was probably 15 years ago. I was an idiot, late 20s, early 30s-year-old. Anyway, I actually published an article that was like my top 10 list of things more important than skills and experience. Because the way we hire right now is the first and only thing we even see at first is the resume.
Yeah.
And the resume is, well, it's written by AI. It's a fabrication of truth. It's, it's a half truth. But B, it's not, it's not on my radar. Like skills and experience is important at some point in the phase for some jobs. But we've all hired the person with all the skills and experience who, it turns out, their experience just taught them a bunch of bad habits, and they had to go completely unlearn them They're an organization. We've had to reteach completely new skills, even though we thought they had that from their prior work. And so I want to look at a whole list of things. The hardwiring, obviously, that's what we're measuring. And it's not hardwiring, by the way, it's not the best word, because neuroplasticity is a thing. We do shift. We just don't necessarily fully change with some of these more cognitive traits. But the reason that's important, there's no pass or fail. Our assessment in particular is about 8 minutes on average. So it's quick, it's frictionless, it's eerily accurate, and you can't do poorly. You can only be you. And every attribute, high or low or left or right, speaks to your strengths in that. And look, if your strengths are, the things that make you a perfect accountant, we're maybe not looking at you for sales. Okay, we'll be fair. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
But for the most part, right, it's just really good information. Anyway, but beyond that, what are the future needs of the organization? What are these person's values? What what is the perspective they bring in that's different than what we already have? What's their emotional intelligence? Man, can we figure that out in an interview or throughout the course of interviews, plural? All of these things are going to tell me whether or not somebody's a better fit than their resume, their GPA, their cognitive, how well they did on, if they knew how many planes were in the sky, or what they did with a tray.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because it's that how do we better understand how this person is going to be in an organization, because we bring all of it. They used to say, leave your problems at the door. Well, you can't. Your emotional brain responds 24 times faster than your thinking brain. So wherever you go, you go. It's like,
unless we're hiring sociopaths who just don't access that path between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, we're not going to be able to leave. How did you put it? Whatever at the door.
It was used to be leave your problems at the door, and it's like you can't. They come with you. They creep into those conversations. Jason, I could literally chat to you all day. I can't believe.
Fun. Yeah, but
I thoroughly enjoyed it. But can you share with us before you go? How do people get in touch with you, and who do you help?
Yeah. Well, who we help is just comes down to one question: do you have employees? We help you. Even the pricing model is based on your employee headcount. Right? So if you're startup mode, we're trying to make this thing super affordable. If you're 10,000 people, you're gonna there's a lot more engagement, so it costs more. But we help by fixing hiring. We bring in an objective data leg of the stool that just doesn't exist in our current structure. Find me, Aptive Index. It's a made up word, by the way. APTIVE, aptiveindex.com. The LinkedIn/Jason P. Carroll. You got to put the P there. Apparently, there's a bunch of Jason Carrolls, country music artist, CNN anchor, felon here in the U.S. So my PR company use your middle initials so people can actually find you. So that's how you track me down.
Amazing, Jason. I love that. And if anybody hasn't been able to scribble that down fast enough, all the ways to get in touch with Jason are in the notes below. So if you didn't get to write that down, please just look at the notes below and you'll find them all there. Jason, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so very much for coming on, sharing your insight and all of your learned experience. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And until next time, I hope all of you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did. Until next time, take care.